Hi everybody, how are you today? We're going to talk about some more Easter stories. So let's just kind of recap how your Easter was. I hope you had a great Easter. I hope the Easter Bunny came to see you, and I hope you got an Easter basket, maybe with some treats. There's still a few little treats left in mine. I haven't eaten everything, not yet. So these past few weeks, we've had a lot going on, especially during Holy Week. So on Palm Sunday, can you remind me what happened? That's right. Jesus rode the donkey into Jerusalem, and people praised him with palms and they waved the branches. And then how about Good Friday? Do you remember that? Do you remember I said to me the term Good Friday was confusing because I didn't think it was good, because that's the day that Jesus died on the cross. And what happened on Easter? Do you remember that? What happened last Sunday? Well, that's when Jesus rose from the dead. So you remember these stories, I think, pretty well, I hope. So let's talk about what life might have been like if you were one of Jesus's disciples. Jesus, had been put to death for refusing to deny that he was the Messiah. The Messiah is the Son of God. And so do you think the people who killed Jesus liked his followers so much, his friends? No, I don't think so. I think they probably was guilt by association. They probably thought, well, we don't like Jesus, so we don't like his friends either, which isn't nice. So what do you think you might have done if you were one of the disciples? If you thought that those people might come after you too? If it were me, I probably would have gone and hidden. I would have been scared. So in today's lesson, we're going to talk about how the disciples felt right after Jesus died. And the story takes place later in the day on Easter. This is still the same day. So they're still in shock that his body was gone. They go to the tomb and they're thinking, oh, we just need to check and, see how the body is and make sure nobody's moved it or done anything. And the whole body was gone. So they were probably scared for their own lives at that point, thinking, oh, not only did they kill Jesus, but now they've taken him somewhere. And I bet they didn't want anyone to know that the body of Jesus was gone from its burial tomb. So as they were walking from Jerusalem to a village called Emmaus, they got a really big surprise. And you'll find out more about that later on in our lesson. But remember this surprise that the disciples received, it completely changed their lives. And then they weren't afraid anymore. So that sounds like a pretty good surprise to me. So let's start talking about what happened. So let's do a quick check-in. So did everybody have a good week? I know most of you are in school full-time now, or should be relatively soon. So how did your week go? So let's think about our week in terms of a road. Like, how some roads are smooth and some roads are bumpy and some roads have potholes, and sometimes when it snows, the roads are icy. So if you had to talk about how your week was in terms of being a road, what would you say? I would say that my road was pretty smooth this week, but it had a few little potholes here and there, a few little things that I didn't expect. Let's talk about detours. Did your road this past week have any detours? Did you think you were going to do one thing and then you had to switch and do another? That happens sometimes too. I have to say it's happening to me more because now we're no longer, totally not doing anything like we were in COVID. We're more active, and so I'm tending to forget things here and there. So that's how my week was. So think about your week and think about it in terms of a road and detours. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a family member or a friend move away? And maybe it was somebody that you were used to having around maybe all the time. And how did you feel when that person was gone? I mean, did you feel sad? Did you feel lonely? Did you just really miss them? So the people who knew and loved Jesus, they probably felt really sad and lost when he died. And it didn't make sense to them that God's son could die in such a sad way. I mean, to them, they thought that was really bad. And there was a lot of confusion about what his death meant for them. Was this the end for everybody? I mean, were they all in trouble too? And could they be killed? And what about all the new and wonderful things that Jesus had taught them? They wondered what he meant when he said he would live again. I mean, because people back then, when you died, you just died. That was it. And it didn't seem very likely that he was going to live again when they saw how he died on the cross. So in today's story, it is 3 days after Jesus' death on the cross. So it's 3 days after Good Friday. And two very sad people are walking on a road going to the village of Emmaus when an extraordinary encounter occurs. So let's find out what it is. Our story today, if you're looking in your regular Bible, is Luke chapter 24, verses 13 through 35. If you're using your big Spark Bible, it's on page 1168. If you're using the little Spark Bible that is story related, it's page 488. So, 3 days after Jesus died, Cleopas and his friend were slowly walking down the road to Emmaus. They were walking slowly because they felt very sad. Why did Jesus have to die, they wondered. After a while, a stranger began to walk along with them. The stranger was really Jesus. But Cleopas and his friend didn't know it. "What are you talking about?" the stranger asked. The men looked at each other. "Are you the only person in town who doesn't know what just happened?" they asked. They told the stranger what had happened to Jesus. "Jesus was a great teacher," Cleopas said. "We hoped he was the one God promised would save the world, but instead he died on a cross. We took Jesus' body down and put it in a tomb. This morning our friends went to the tomb, but Jesus' body was gone. They said there was an angel there instead. The angel told our friends, 'Jesus is alive, but—'" "Stop being silly," the stranger said. "How many times do you need to hear this? It was God's plan for Jesus to die and to become alive again and to save the world." I don't know if they're being silly. I would kind of think the same thing. By now, they were almost to Emmaus. Cleopas invited the stranger to stay for dinner. And during dinner, the stranger picked up a loaf of bread, broke it, blessed it, and gave each man a piece. Does that remind you of anything? Do you remember we talked about the Last Supper on Maundy Thursday and the bread that he gave them and said, "This is my body, which is given for you"? Rings a bell to me. All of a sudden, Cleopas and his friend recognized the stranger. It was Jesus. They clued in too. But then Jesus disappeared. Cleopas and his friend jumped up, ran from the room, and went to tell the rest of Jesus' disciples that Jesus really was alive. God kept another promise. Yeah, that was a dead giveaway, the whole breaking of the bread. Remember, we talked about that for Maundy Thursday. So, do you think you would have recognized Jesus on the road to Emmaus? So let me ask you a question. These days, we have to wear, where'd mine go? We have to wear these all the time, right? You have to wear them in school, when you go out to run errands, if you're out playing and there's more people around, it's not just your pod or your family, you have to wear these. I have to say, when I wear this, I don't recognize people. I see people and I don't know who they are. I have walked past somebody and then they'll say Angie and I'll turn around because I'm not used to just seeing this part up. So I can kind of identify with maybe not recognizing somebody. So why do you think Cleopas and the other disciple didn't recognize Jesus? I mean, I don't think he had on a mask. I don't think we had COVID right then. So I don't know. I don't know if Jesus was in a different form, if he looked different, or if they just were so sad and they knew that he died and they didn't believe because it hadn't happened before that someone would rise from the dead. I mean, it's kind of like a science fiction story, right? It's not a normal thing. So I'd like for you to imagine, if you would, that I was raised by a pack of wolves living in Sherburne, and that's who raised me. And let's say then I came to live near you and I'd never been around humans before. Can you imagine that? Do you think I'd have good manners? Probably not. you probably wouldn't want to invite me to dinner. So imagine that you get to take turns hanging out with me and teaching me how to live like a human. So what are some things that you think I'll need to learn? Well, if you're having me for dinner, I probably need to learn how to use utensils and to chew with my mouth closed, how to read and write, how to ride a bike, how to speak, how to talk, how to wear clothes and shoes, those kinds of things. So how would you begin to do these things? How do you teach somebody something like that who's never seen it? That's something to think about. It'd take a lot of patience, number one, I believe. One of the other things you get to do is to teach me about God. What are some of the most important things for me to know about God? Think about that. If you had to tell someone who had no clue what are the most important things about God, what would you tell them? Maybe draw it or write it. Put it in a journal. If you kept your gratitude journal during Easter, you could use that. So, one of the good things of our faith is that Jesus has promised to be with us always. So we are able to see glimpses of Jesus in other people, and we are able to show other people characteristics of Jesus. I'm not saying like physically we see him, but we see things that he taught us about being generous, about being kind, about giving to others, about understanding and patience and love, unconditional love, no matter what. So those are things that show people about Jesus. How do we do that in our church sometimes? Do you know? Well, we feed the hungry sometimes. We do the meal kits that we provide. We make blankets for newborns. There's lots of things that we do, and there are lots of things I'm sure that your family participates in to do. Sometimes the Kindness Club goes to Unity Farm and helps out with the animals, and they will give food to the animals. The animals apparently really like romaine lettuce, so being kind to animals is another way. So in all these ways, we are able to show that Jesus is alive in our world, and he continues to meet us on the road of life, on that bumpy road or that smooth road or that slick road or the road with the detour. He meets us no matter where we are or how pitted the road is. So that to me is one of the most important lessons about this. So speaking of roads, let me ask you a question. What is the furthest you've ever traveled in a car? Do you know? I have driven from here to Atlanta, Georgia, and that is far, because I went one time to go back and get some stuff after we moved here. So how did you know where you were going? I have to say, when I drove, I had to use my navigation system, my GPS. Before GPSs, we had paper maps where you actually had like a highlighter and you'd draw it and you'd figure out where you were going. Kind of wild, isn't it? So every person's life is a journey, and looking back, we are able to see the maps of our lives. And when we think about the future, we can help shape some of the way our journeys will look as we move forward. So I'd like for you this week to try to create a roadmap of your life today. Record the special times and important events that are in the past. You can draw a little map, as well as the detours and the rough spots. So that's always something good to look at. And then you can put things that you want to do in the future. So with that being said, I hope that you all have a smooth road this week without too many detours. And if you have detours, I hope they're fun. So let us close with a prayer. Dear God, thank you for sending us surprises that change our lives. Sometimes it's hard to see how joy can come out of sorrow, but we know that you have a plan for each and every one of us. Hear our thankful prayers for the surprises you send our way. In your name we pray. Amen. And with that, I will see you next week, and I hope that you have a blessed week.